Welcome back to both of you, based upon our viewer numbers, to the Wild and Crazy Guys podcast. And we are very excited. This is another good week for Saturday Night Live. John Mulaney and the Strokes.
Yeah, the Strokes. I didn't know they were still doing stuff, but there they were.
I'm not really familiar with the Strokes, but they put on a nice little show for both of their songs. I don't know much about them, but I liked them.
So I remember they started kind of busting on the scene kind of later in college for me, and so that was kind of they were kind of viewed as being like the band that was going to save rock and roll, kind of thing, and that whole narrative of like this is now rock and roll. So we'll talk about them in just a little bit. But like you said, John Mulaney as the host. This is his fourth time, I believe he said. Fourth time.
And again, according to in a very John Mulaney way, he said it was his fourth time hosting. That's the most ever.
Yeah. And fact check, no, that's not correct. But you know what? We'll let him go with it. So now at the top, let's do the stamps.com trivia question brought to you by stamps.com. Go to stamps.com for all your postage needs. Use comment code NORM for no % off at stamps.com.
Save the USPS.
Save the USPS, right. Now, John Mulaney, of course, a former writer for the show. And when he hosted for the first time, he became just the third former writer who hosted the show, but who wasn't a cast member either. So just only a writer who later went on to host the show. There are two of them.
Wow. Was not a cast member, but was a writer.
Now, someone pointed out that Zach Galifianakis was a 2-week guest writer. We don't count that. Even Tina Fey was a writer. She later became a cast member, so it doesn't count. So was a writer and host, but not a cast member.
Oh, man. Geez. I don't know if Conan O'Brien ever hosted, but he was definitely a writer.
Conan O'Brien is one of them. Very good.
Okay. All right.
Now the next one, if you don't get, you'll be very disappointed. I'll say that much.
Now, did Larry David ever host? That's
true.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great start. That's a stamps.com trivia question.
It's a great question and a great job by you getting that. I mean, you weren't fully confident your answers, but they were both the right path. That's fantastic. Well done by you. Well done by you.
I'm very proud. That's great.
As you should be, yeah.
Get nasty.
Oh, throw him to the pole. Is that just going to become a celebration music?
Which will be a big moment, I think, on today's show. So the cold open led things off, as it tends to do. And this was thankfully a non-debate one. It was political, but I thought it was very creative and well done by having Joe Biden talk about how he was going to win, but cautionary tales brought to us vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton, Nate Silver, Lil Wayne, Kamala Harris, and Mitch McConnell all made appearances to warn Joe Biden to not get too overconfident here.
Yeah, it was one of those things that they say it's funny, but it's true. I don't know that it was all that funny, but it was definitely true.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was good. The reason I liked it most, and I texted you as soon as it happened, 3 minutes shorter than any cold open we've had this year. So I really appreciated that.
They didn't drag out any bits, I don't think, too long. I mean, I think you probably could have made it a tad shorter, but I thought every piece of it worked, and it was comical. It was well done. It seemed to flow pretty well. You incorporated a lot of different people. Some of the Nate Silver stuff was a bit like, I don't know how many people that watch SNL know Nate Silver. Maybe people do, but I thought that was kind of maybe a little bit of a stretch. But the bit worked, even if you don't know who Nate Silver really is.
I've got to believe. Well, I learned who Nate Silver was during the 2016 election, so I'm thinking that a lot of people did then as well. But I could be wrong about that.
He's probably a bit more mainstream now than he would have been 4 years ago. I think. I mean, and President Trump has called him out quite a bit, so perhaps he's more well known now than he once was. But that to me still worked. It still made sense. Now he rolled the dice and rolled a 1 like 7 times in a row, and so yes, it can happen. You can lose.
Yep.
So I thought it was good. So then we come up with John Mulaney doing the monologue. And I sent you a tweet out by John Mulaney, the moment right before he goes on through the door, which to me, that's always I love that image of those moments before you're about to go live, waiting to go on, waiting for the door to open. Now, wasn't there a story when Bill Hader was hosting maybe, and like someone locked the door on him, like knowing they could open up really quickly, but like kind of that moment of panic of like, this is live and this is actually happening. Once the door opens, you go.
I couldn't remember if it was Bill Hader, but I do remember hearing a story like that. And SNL retweeted that picture from John Mulaney, and it's really cool. It's really a good look and a great angle at kind of that moment before it all begins.
And his monologue was stand-up comedy wise. I don't know if I can point to anyone right now. I mean, maybe Dave Chappelle is in that pantheon of someone who is just so sharp and so good. And he showed no signs of rust by being in a layoff for the last few months.
You're watching someone with John Mulaney at this point in time. You're watching, 1970s Steve Martin. You're watching somebody who is just at the top of their game and just in the prime of their career. He is just he's firing on all cylinders.
Even the joke early on about like the guy that said I'm in Midtown Manhattan when he clearly wasn't, and gave him a wink walking by, like just the delivery. I could like visualize the whole thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
Even as and that was an aside, and that wasn't even like his main bits were about the sleepover party that he keeps spinning that yarn. It's just so good.
The thing about this episode with John Mulaney, and it happens every time he's on, is that there are a lot of strictly New York references, but they're broad enough that even if you don't live in New York, you totally understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, and now here we are basically saying how we love the stand-up comedian doing this, even after Bill Burr and Chris Rock we weren't too fond of. But I think John Mulaney is in a bit of a different category, and like he knows SNL, he knows the stage, he knows what's going to work. So perhaps he gets a pass because he is so good, and because this is like his wheelhouse.
Well, and he's also, I would say, certainly not as abrasive as Bill Burr or Chris Rock. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think they're just a little stronger in personality. John Mulaney's a little more laid back and a little more warm and welcoming, if you will.
Totally. So that was very well done. And we go right into, I don't know, what's the name of the show? I just call it the Reese DeWatt Show.
Yeah, Cinema Classics.
Cinema Classic with Reese DeWatt.
Yeah, what?
You and I are Keenan stans, so maybe we're not the most objective viewers here, but his delivery, the way the jokes were written, the sketch was kind of dumb with the birds, but it was fine. But it was like Keenan's in between parts just make it so good.
That's all I need. I just need Reese DeWatt. I don't need the birds. It doesn't matter to me. But yes, I am an unabashed Keenan stan. I'm fine with it. I'm good with it. I'm proud of it. I love Kenan Thompson, and this is one of his recurring characters, and it's always a very good one because he plays the air of a very like educated cinema historian who has no common sense when it always comes to his wife when it just nonsense, and it's he's very good. Now I think in the past there were times where there were combinations of Reese DeWatt and Kate McKinnon's character Bavette Goldry, which that's an all-star team right there.
Let's bring that one back. I love Kenan too in the Dracula costume with the widow's peak painted on the forehead, and just didn't need to do that, but it works.
Yeah,
it was great. It was great.
Kenan was on his A game this week, and there's a couple more scenes where he'll play, but he was on his A game this week.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And yeah, it said that even Mulaney and Kate McKinnon together we're solid as the birds thing. But I thought it was kind of just in general kind of an odd, kind of a zany kind of bit with the turtles and the sandwiches and all that. But again, Reese DeWatt carried this for sure.
And that you can put anything in between. You can put anything in between Reese DeWatt. That's all I need.
Yep. We then move to our first digital short.
Been hoping for so long for November 3rd.
Strollin to the polls. And Chris Redd acknowledged that he wrote this with one of the writers. I mean, wow, this it's been in my head for the last 3 days. I'm whistling around the house. I'm doing it. I mean, I obviously I can't hold the dance the way these four could. But man, was it was so well good. It was timely. It was well written. It was funny. The music was great. Like, for me, top to bottom, this was fantastic.
Strolling to the polls might go down as one of the classic Saturday Night Live songs, with some of those others that we know by, like The Lonely Island, etc. King Tut. I mean, this could go down because it was perfect in every way. I've got zero bad things to say about it.
Full disclosure, it's currently 1 p.m. on Monday, November 2nd. I'm gonna go vote myself tomorrow, and I will be singing "Strolling to the Polls" as I walk in tomorrow. Having like the guy with like the military gear and the gun walking by them, and they get quiet. It was just like, and someone commented like, this would be a lot more funny if it wasn't so true. And so,
True.
Taking some of the social commentary aside from it, this was just great. It was fantastic. Top to bottom, just a great bit all around. I loved it.
Agreed.
We then moved to Sleepy Hollow, or the Ichabod Crane, finding the Headless Horseman. I think we both agreed in advance we're not going to delve into the jokes for this one. We're just going to say it had some good juvenile moments in it.
It had good juvenile humor, but it was the same juvenile humor for 5 straight minutes. It was fine. It was fine for what it was. Although, as you brought up, and I agree. Oh my God. Pete Davidson has just been really on this season, and he was very good in that scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's acting and it comes up later too. Like, his acting has been great. Like, he, I think we've grown so accustomed to him either just being off on the timing or laughing too much to get his jokes off. But he was pretty sharp, even for a bit like this, which is very immature. He kept it together pretty darn well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, kind of ambivalent, but it was fine. It was what it was. We then had a digital short of sorts in which we had kind of a thank you to the people of New York City, the first responders, the clerks at the grocery stores and food delivery guys, kind of thanking them for all the stuff, but also with a crazy, I don't know if homeless is the right word, but Kate McKinnon playing kind of a character you'd see in Central Park, who was just sort of doing their own thing. I think I texted you, I didn't love it, but the sentiment was nice. And, this is New York City. And so I thought it worked. It wasn't that funny, but I thought it was nice.
I think this is one of the things I'm referring to when I say the New York jokes were broad enough that even if you don't live in New York, you'd get them. Because for anybody who's ever visited New York, you've run into a lady like that. There are people like that in New York City who are just inexplicably unique, we'll say, and part of the fabric of New York, absolutely. And so, I thought it was really well done, and it wasn't laugh out loud funny, but it was kind of like a smirk, like, yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't do something like this earlier on. I know they reference it in the monologues of having them sit in front row and all that stuff, but I'm kind of surprised this wasn't done earlier on in the season, but that was fine. So the Strokes then come on for our first performance, and the Strokes sound exactly like they sounded 17 years ago or so. Nothing, stand out about this performance. They had a big obey sign in the background, which is, somewhat tied into politics there. But all in all, just kind of the Strokes being the Strokes, and nothing noteworthy in my mind.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm not a big Strokes fan, but I had no issue with the performance of any kind.
And then an update, and I thought this update was lacking, but in the first 5 to 7 jokes, they went hard at President Trump. Really going at it hard. And obviously SNL is not known as being a conservative safe haven by any stretch, but I thought some of these jokes were a little bit like they're really going hard at him. And whatever, it's comedy, but I was surprised they leaned in that far to him.
It's really interesting you bring that up because the first thing I was going to say was just I was blown away by how overtly Democratic the Weekend Update was this week. I mean, there were no two ways. They were telling you exactly how to vote, exactly what you should be worried about, which is. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's nothing that bothers me, but I think it was just much stronger than it's been ever before. The other thing that I noticed about Weekend Update was there was no mention of Colin Jost having gotten married this week. I thought Che would have given something.
I thought they did very briefly. Like he said, like, "Oh, you're married to Scarlett Johansson," and like it was as an aside more than anything else. It wasn't like they did reference like that. He is married to her, but not like that. He got married this past week.
Okay, maybe I just missed it because I thought it'd be a bigger deal.
It was very subtle. And also at the end, closing credits, they were all pointing at him for the closing credits kind of thing. But yeah, they didn't really take time to step aside and reference that in the show.
Baby Yoda, I believe, was the only Kyle Mooney appearance this week.
I have to think about that. We
talked about it last week, and he wasn't really in the show last week.
Was he not in the souvenir bit, at the musical bit? I have to think back on that one, but he wasn't prominent if he was.
If he was in it, he was not a big part.
I thought Baby Yoda bit was kind of dumb, but then I thought about it more and more. This is like that's what happens in that slot. It doesn't always have to be a winning sketch or a great sketch or a great person to come on. It was kind of just dumb and juvenile and silly, but like sometimes that's what goes there.
I was thinking we love the logistics of Saturday Night Live. We love the way the stage is set up and all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking that between the digital short, the musical guest, and the Weekend Update, the grand majority of the cast has about 25 minutes off there, just kind of hanging out. And that's got to be tough for timing and staying in your zone.
Yeah, for sure. And just the ability to like just go in not knowing like what sketches are going to be included or not, and like the time lags and like having to like get up for a bit and come back down and get back up. That part to me has got to be crazy. And some shows too, like they run out of time and say, okay, this is scrapped and that kind of stuff too. It's really fascinating to hear the behind the scenes and how all that goes and what the mentality, because an hour and a half, that's what we hear from hosts. The first time the hosts say like it's the fastest hour and a half of their life, because everything's happening so quickly and like it's kind of a blur. But for cast members who are there every week, I'm sure they kind of feel the same way, but it's a whole different mindset.
Well, and even when you look at the time, usually during the end credits, you'll get to see the clock that they have there in the studio, and usually it's a couple minutes past 1 New York time. So they have a couple minutes of leeway, but just putting that all together is just it's a puzzle piece that I just love thinking about. It's just a fun thing to try to figure out.
I caught something today on Twitter. I believe that was like a digital short that got bumped for time. I think it was about voting and stuff. I'll send it to you later, but I'm always curious. Like to me, like obviously it's one of the dreams in life is to see a live taping, but I'd almost be as intrigued by watching the dress rehearsal and then watching the actual show. Both would be great, but like watching the actual show later on to see like what got cut, what didn't make it, why didn't it make it, like was this not enough laughs, was this maybe too inappropriate? Like that part to me is like the in-between time. That's got to be just like such a rush, because you've already seen what happens, but like how can we make this better? That part to me is just so intriguing.
Yeah, to watch the dress rehearsal and then see what actually comes out of it would be that is awesome.
Mm-hmm. We next then had, after update, we had what's become now the John Mulaney staple, which I had mixed feelings on this, of having a scene, a generic New York scene, turning into a Broadway musical, or what's it called, like a medley of Broadway musicals. And this one was two souvenir shop customers wanting to buy some New York souvenirs, and turning into a full-on musical. And I'll let you kind of drive this one, because I think I recognize some of the songs in musicals, but I know for a fact I couldn't spot all of them.
Yeah, I mean, there was some Fiddler on the Roof. There was some, I think there was some Chorus Line. There was some Les Mis. It like you said, it's we expected it. We knew it was coming. and it was fine. But the first time it happened, it was the Lobster, I believe, and then the second time it happened, I think it was at LaGuardia. Okay. It's a very creative sketch. It's a very creative idea, and it's got to take an amazing amount of time to rewrite those lyrics and to put all the costumes together. And but I really do wonder if the journey is worth the destination anymore, because it was kind of fun and exciting the first couple times, and now that you know that it's coming, it's really hard to meet expectations, I'd say.
Right, and the Les Mis one was just out of left field and just kind of like it blew my mind watching it. And I don't think I've laughed that much, not as much as being just funny, but being just so cleverly done. But the last couple ones, they're fun, and like I like when they incorporate as many of the cast as possible. To me, that's always logistically that's the part to me that would be fascinating to watch. Them logistically choreograph that whole thing, because how tiny that space is, how big some of those costumes are, the timing of the songs and the singing for live theater is like, it's kind of amazing to kind of think about. But at the same token, it's like maybe it's time to find a different bits.
Yeah, Louis the Shrimp from Bubba Gump is that's a very niche reference. That is the part that got me most excited, because years ago I took our students on a field trip to New York City, and I was looking for restaurants that had good group deals for students, and Bubba Gump's was one of them, and it's right in the middle of Times Square. So I said, all right, fine, we'll do this. And when I called and made the group reservations, they asked, would you like Louis the Shrimp to come to your table? And I said, I don't know who that is. And they said, oh, Louis the Shrimp. He's the mascot of Bubba Gump's. And I said, well, absolutely, I want Louis the Shrimp to come to my table. So I told all the kids, hey, good news, guys. Louis the Shrimp will be visiting our table. And they were not familiar with said Louis the Shrimp, but there he was on Saturday Night Live. So I feel like maybe they're trendsetters.
No, it's a great reference. And like, we had some jokes about the Bubblegum Shrimp here, RIP on Navy Pier, another, I wouldn't say Navy Pier, Chicago's Times Square, but like there's a touristy connection there to those two places, and how there's a Bubblegum Shrimp on Navy Pier, at least for now. I think that's changing soon. But it's kind of a connection there we can make to it. But I mean, again, it was fun. It was well done. But I used to wonder now, I maybe you could help me out here. Chloe Fineman, what was she? What was that from? Because she knocked it out of the park. I mean, she stole the show for me in this bit. I don't know what her thing was, but I'll have to look that up.
I will go back and get you that answer. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Maybe our Patreon subscribers, you can go through each person and say what musical and song that came from for Patreon.
And if you like, we will gladly perform one of the songs in our Don Pardo voices.
Ooh. I have to look back, and I don't know if the Strokes hosted before. Maybe we could do that for the Strokes as well for our like 2002 Don Pardo voice, only for our Patreon subscribers.
But only for Patreon. The other thing that I'd point out about this sketch was, if you watch Keenan closely enough, he is loving life. If you watch him, he is literally biting his bottom lip to not break. He is just loving it.
But he does it like, I mean, he's just so professionol. He holds it together. He does great. Well, I mean, he was the lobster for the Les Mis bit, and that was iconic.
Yeah.
But he's just so good at it. He's just so good at that. So speaking of the Strokes, we had our second performance by them. Kind of the same thing here. It sounded like the Strokes, and just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, fine with the Strokes. No problems there.
We closed out with I believe this was, I'm not sure how many times they did this before with Mulaney, but the Brenner Corporation, in which John Mulaney plays the vice president or president of this company, and his nephew, played by Pete Davidson, turns pictures of him into memes. This is a solid 11:55 concept. This wasn't as funny as I recall the last time, but it's still it works in that slot.
Yeah, I think the thing that I like when Mulaney hosts is it's kind of a predictable show, and none of his bits are broken by any means. I mean, keep around what you got, but this is it's it's predictable while unpredictable. You know what the joke is going to be, but you don't know how it's going to be presented, and it's perfect for 11:55.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the show, it would probably fall pretty flat. But as the very end there, with only a few minutes left, it's a really good finish.
I just don't find the jokes weren't as funny this time around. I mean, there were some funny pieces with it, but like it was sort of it wasn't as humorous as I was expecting it to be, but it was still some references. Like they talk about the Chris Hansen thing, and he explained how the Chris Hansen show actually works, and some of that kind of stuff. That's kind of Mulaney carrying that.
Yeah, but he's another one. Like we said earlier, he's so smooth that he can carry whatever sketch he wants to.
Yeah. Going back a little bit here, I guess I did look it up. The Strokes last came on in 2002 in season 27. When the Strokes had their last performance. I believe their first and only performance prior to this in 2002. And host for that was
2002. I'm trying to guess who the host would be in 2002.
This would be pretty.
What's that?
It'll be pretty niche, but once you hear it, it'll make sense.
2002. Nev Campbell.
No, Jack Black.
Okay, yeah.
Jack Black. He came with Tenacious D. I believe Tenacious D played with the Strokes on one of the sketches, I think, or something along those lines.
Okay.
So then we cut to the credits, where we had nothing of note from my end here. I said all the people they're pointing at Colin Jost, who got married this past week to Scarlett Johansson. No Cecily, no AD again. That's kind of just become the standard. I don't think we'll see them until they come back in December or even after Christmas, because now they're not going to come out for the near future.
I noticed a couple things about the credits.
Oh wow! Usually don't. Usually I'm the guy who notices that stuff.
Well, you've inspired me, so I watched them very carefully. Number one, a lot of hugging going on. Now I know they're all masked, and that's fine. No problem. But there's a lot of hugging going on. But number two, and what I thought was most interesting, was the only cast member paying any attention to the audience was Bowen Yang. Everybody else was talking to each other or high-fiving each other or hugging each other. Bowen Yang was acknowledging the crowd and waving and saying thank you, which to me is a very classy thing. I thought that was really good. The other thing I noticed was that while they were still on stage, while they were still hugging and partying and such, the ushers had already come out to the crowd to start leading the audience to the exit. So they waste no time getting that building empty, it would seem.
Yeah, interesting. I did not notice that, but I'll have to.
Here's what I'd like to know. Again, the logistics of something. When they're done, when the credits are done rolling, does the entire cast exit through that one door? Do they all walk off side stage? Do they go back through the middle, through the audience? I'd like to know how they all get off stage and how they all get on stage.
Yeah, I think you have to know the inner workings of the studio and stuff. Now, I think that I've seen pictures of it. There's obviously the door they all leave the actual building from to waiting cars to take them to the after party. And I'm not sure how that plays out now. But I saw someone last week left right away. They went right down the middle of the aisle and just like this almost ran out right away. I don't recall who it was. If it was a musical guest or who it was, but they left right away, right down the middle aisle. So yeah, I don't know how all that plays out and how. But going back to your point about the hugging, they work in such tight quarters. I think the masks, obviously the masks are just a front at the end to kind of say we're in solidarity. But I gotta believe the course of a week, they work in so close proximity. The hallways of that place, the dressing rooms are so small, they're exposed to each other constantly.
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't know how that works out or how quickly they have to get to their cars to go to the party or how that works. Definitely we'll have to get a cast member on. Maybe we can book a cast member to be our first guest.
Well, what's interesting about the other thing about the credits is that there are some that are already, like Jim Carrey looked like he was ready to walk out the door. He had his overcoat on, he had his jeans on, he was ready to go home. But then there were some cast members still in costume, and so they still have to change. They got to do all that stuff. So it's interesting. That's just all kind of fascinates me. And I know Alec Baldwin is almost never there for the bows. He's almost never there for the credits. So he must do his thing and go home.
Right. So yeah, as I was noting, there was no Alec Baldwin this week. There was no President Trump appearance this week. So speaking of that, we have some flashbacks here. 4 years ago, Dave Chappelle hosted the post-election show, and Dave Chappelle will be hosting this post-election show, which was a interesting, visual, seeing that the cold open was all about how this could all just be a repeat of 2016. So that's now kind of fueling that fire.
Well, it's an interesting parallel, and by the time we record this next week, I don't know if we'll know who will be playing the president for the next 4 years. I don't know what the timing is going to be on everything, but I do know that the parallels to 2016 with Dave Chappelle hosting that's fascinating. It's really interesting.
It is, and something we talked about just casually last time, just in between, has been like, they probably went full on into that week thinking Hillary Clinton's going to win. Let's write bits for that, and then Tuesday night they got to pivot real quick. And we could be looking at this election could be decided early Wednesday morning. It could go into Thursday, Friday, perhaps. Like they might be writing the show without knowing who the winner is. So this is probably gonna be a stressful but fun week, I imagine, for them, because as of what the table reads on Tuesday, right? Typically the table reads on Tuesday, or they go through Tuesday. I mean, how can you plan for a show Saturday when your biggest piece of reference is going to be decided that evening or the next day or two?
I think you just got to concentrate on everything that isn't election based. Any sketches you want to do that aren't election based, anything that's, kind of like, we brought up a few weeks ago, like when Letterman would tape his Friday shows on Thursday night, all of the monologue was not topical. It was just kind of general jokes. And I think if there are going to be sketches not politically based, you just got to spend your time on those and hope for the best for the rest, I guess.
Or you have like what they do for a lot of time for presidential speeches. You have prepared the speech for if the mission goes well, and the speech written for if the mission goes poorly, and you have kind of both in a couple options in the can, and you just dust one off if you got to. But that's again, fun but a crazy thing.
We've all seen the Nixon speech for if the Apollo 11 astronauts had not made it home. We know that was prepared. So perhaps you just prepare two different cold opens and see which one you're going to use on Saturday.
I think you have to and go with that. And Dave Chappelle, I'm sure, has plenty of material to go either way. So
he's another one that's a comedic genius. He's a comedic genius. He's another one that's so fast that he's going to be able to react however he has to.
Well, I feel he's probably the right guy for this thing too, because you don't want to put someone out there who their first time hosting or being put in this very uncomfortable, awkward spot. And I believe Aziz Ansari, hosted the inauguration episode in 2017, right before the inauguration of President Trump. But I think getting someone who is very, very comfortable in that mode has got to be crucial for a tense moment like that.
Very good strategy.
Yeah. So that's all we got, I believe. We'll just kind of wait and see. This is I have to do some research here, but this has got to be the first 6 weeks in a row ever, right?
This is unheard of, and I would think that this is the last week now. This is probably it, and then we get some time off for Thanksgiving.
I would hope so. I mean, as much as I would like to see more, I think it's time for a break. Now, also side notes, I believe this evening, Monday evening, they're doing a political special on NBC during prime time. So probably your usual, your garden variety of political sketches over the years. So all of our thousands of viewers, make sure you give that a tune in tonight if you're looking for some programming ideas for yourself. But
maybe a Dukakis reference of "I can't believe I'm losing to this guy."
Well, I think Trump's made that line a couple times in some of his speech, not referencing that, but more so like, "How am I losing to this guy?" I doubt President Trump is that aware to tie in a Michael Dukakis impersonation from the 1980s, but who knows?
Never know.
Six-dimensional chess. Who knows?
Well, this has been one of my favorites because it was a good episode. Overall, I'm giving the episode a solid B. I'm giving it a solid B this week.
I'm gonna give it a B too. I'm gonna give it a B plus. Actually, I thought it was just a good, not like amazingly great, but just really good and solid all around.
Well, you can hear the music from not G.E. Smith and the Saturday Night Live band, but that means it's time. Oh, there you go. What does your sign say this time?
Hi.
Hi. There you go.
Down the road.
Yeah. All right. Well, say good night, Joseph.
All right. Good night, Joe.